belong to you. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilization, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the best Star Trek show on the internet. I am your Captain Graham Nolan. Welcome to the landing party. Captain's log, Dagger of the Mind tonight. Stardate 2405.29. This episode was written by Shimon Winselberg. Also, well, is credited as S. Bar David, but we'll get into that a little bit later, why that is. And directed by Vincent McEvedy. Writer Shimon Winselberg was one of Irwin Allen's favorite writers and should be considered the co-creator of Lost in Space. He wrote the pilot, which was expanded into five episodes, the good ones, the black and white ones that set the initial tone of drama for that series before it turned into Batman color camp. It was actually a pretty good show in the beginning with really great special effects. He also worked on Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, and he wrote for and met Gene Roddenberry while working on Have Gun Will Travel, which is an excellent Western. If you haven't seen Have Gun Will Travel, starring Richard Boone, you should check those out. Really, really great. One of my favorite Western TV shows. Second to The Rifleman, perhaps, but nothing beats The Rifleman. The script, like most of the Star Trek scripts, went through many changes. One important one was the removal of dialogue that explains Dr. Adams' motivations. As was originally written, when Kirk was being subjected to the neural neutralizer, he blurts out, "For what purpose, Doctor? I cannot understand a man of your," and he can't finish it because of the pain that's being inflicted on him. But Adams answers anyway, "Of my reputation? Unfortunately, I have little else, except now, with this device, power over minds, and thus over everything that counts. The final great criterion, and I have it. I've decided to use it for myself. After all these years of doing things for others, say I want a comfortable old age on my terms, and I am a most selective man." So obviously, Dr. Adams is sort of a selfish son of a bitch, isn't he? So Kirk, struggling, yells back, unnecessary, just trust. And then Adams says, "Trust mankind to offer me my just reward? You're an optimist, Captain. In this world, I've learned too much about men's minds." I can see why Roddenberry didn't like that. He didn't want this for our future. His hope for mankind was to overcome petty differences in emotions such as envy, jealousy, and greed. He would end up taking that unrealistic idealism into the first two seasons of Star Trek: The Next Generation. But that's another story. We're not going to get into that. Winselberg saw the changes that Roddenberry made, and he was pissed. He would take, he was working on future scripts, the Galileo 7 and a script called The Squaw. But he wrote Roddenberry about his displeasure, and Gene Roddenberry wrote across the note, "Fuck him." It was then that Winselberg decided to use the pseudonym S. Bar David. He had plays running on Broadway at that time and did not want his name associated with a script that he thought had bad dialogue. Hypnotism was originally going to be used on Dr. Van Gelder, to find out what was happening on that planet or at that colony. But the Broadcast Standards Department didn't want that. They were, get this, they were afraid of its possible effects on the viewing audience. Wow. They were afraid of everything back then, Can't show a belly button, for God's sake. And as a result, so was invented the Vulcan mind meld. This is the first episode we see that. And so Dr. Van Gelder is the first person that Spock performs that on. It's a lot more in depth in this episode. We see it later on where he's just touching the face and, and he can enter the mind. In this one, he's kind of like traveling around his head and making all kinds of various pressure points. And he even says to Dr. McCoy, it's not hypnotism. So that's to let the viewers know it's okay. It's not hypnotism. You're not going to be told to buy something that you don't want. This has an excellent cast. James Gregory, who plays Dr. Adams, he's a great character, best known as Inspector Luger on Barney Miller, one of my all-time favorite comedy shows. And as cops will tell you, it's probably the most accurate police show ever done on TV. Just an excellent show with really interesting characters. And James Gregory was fantastic in it. Mariana Hill, who plays Dr. Helen Noel, another character actress that went on to some really great stuff. She was in High Plains Drifter. She was in The Godfather Part 2. She was Fredo's wife in that. And interesting enough, she was married to Bernard Hill, who played King Theoden in the Lord of the Rings. And I believe he was also, wasn't he also the captain of the Titanic? So she was married to him for quite a while. And she was the cousin of Norman Schwarzkopf, the general. How about that? Morgan Woodward, who plays Dr. Van Gelder, we'll see him again in the second season. I believe it's second season, Omega Glory, which of course was one of the very first scripts that was produced for or developed for the pilot in the launching of Star Trek. It's not a great one, but we'll get into that when we get to the third season. But anyway, Woodward was in that. He played Captain Tracy in that, and he's really good. And of course, he was the sort of sadistic guard in Cool Hand Luke. So there is our captain's log for tonight's episode. And let's beam aboard Aaron the Red Shirt and see what he has to say about this. Hello, Aaron.
My name is Simon Van Gelder. Hurt to get that out.
Yeah, Woodward said that was one of the toughest scenes he ever had to film. He was like yelling and screaming and stuff. And it's like he went home and took a nap after that.
Yeah.
Episode.
No more hypo. No more hypo.
Mm-hmm.
I'll try.
He's so good. He's so good in that.
Yep.
Yeah.
In fact, we talked about earlier how Mark Leonard was like the first repeat, character, a different character in the same series. And he would be our second because, like you said, he was in the Omega Glory as well as a starship captain.
Yes.
So,
who actually kicks Kirk's ass a couple times.
Yeah, well, he's a big dude.
He is a big dude. He's 6'3".
Yeah.
In fact, he makes Kirk look small.
In fact, when
he is small, actually.
Yeah, he doesn't make much. When he was running loose in this episode in the Enterprise at the very beginning, you can hear slightly in the background, I think it's Uhura's voice or somebody from security describing the person they're looking for. And they say he's 6'3".
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can just barely hear it. Or 6'2" or 6'3". I can't remember. It was one of those two they said. And I went, because I was wondering to myself, because I always thought he was tall. And I was like, I wonder if that's an accurate description of how tall he really is, or just the character description or whatever. But if you listen to that scene, like when he's he jumps that guy and he gets the blue jumpsuit on, and he's like, going around like this, and you can hear it in the background. They're describing.
That's really cool. I never noticed that.
Yeah, I don't know why I did, but I just happened to be listening at the right moment, and I go, wow, I never noticed that before.
He was in a ton of westerns, Western TV shows. He was a regular on Gunsmoke, a regular reoccurring character on Gunsmoke. Um, he even eventually won like a Silver Spur Award, into the Cowboy Hall of Fame or something like that because he was in so much stuff. Always played a baddie, because
Well, he has that
he had
look.
that look.
Yeah.
He had just kind of had that rough look. But it was such a verse. Oh, he was also, I think, on Dallas for like 10, 12 years. He played some character. I didn't watch Dallas, so
I didn't
it was
either.
just something I came across in my research.
Yeah, it's interesting where these guys show up, and it's always funny because we always look back to Star Trek. You're like, oh, that guy was in Star Trek. Oh, that guy was in Star Trek.
I know. That's how I judge everybody. Were you in Star Trek?
Yeah, exactly. I have nothing to do with you. If you weren't in Star Trek, then
Yeah. Even if you were like Crewman Green from Mantrap, if I see him, oh, that's Crewman Green. I don't know the actor's name, but
I was surprised to hear what you said about the dialogue getting cut because it was a bit lengthy, but at the same time, it did sort of flesh out the Doctor's character
yeah,
and gave him a little bit more motivation because you're right. You ask yourself, why is he doing this?
yeah. Why is this sadistic guy? I mean, basically, he comes across then as a sadistic dude,
Right.
and yet Kirk knew him and his reputation, and
Right.
he was unassailable that way. But then he's this asshole, so in retrospect, you follow along with the story and everything because it's always so well done.
Mhm.
But when you stop to think, you start to ask questions. Well, why is he doing this? What's his motivation here?
Right. And that would have been helpful. I mean, because otherwise we got to fill in the blanks ourselves. Like, well, maybe he's this, or maybe he's that, or maybe, because
Yeah.
he wouldn't be this bad guy through and through if he'd done all this great work in the past.
hmm
It's kind of like in our last episode, Roger Corby, right? He has this great reputation, but then now he's doing this, and it doesn't seem like it's the same guy. But there we got the motivation. This we really didn't. And
Right.
it was like, yeah, he's playing nice until Kirk gets in the chair and they grab Helen Noel, and then he starts, giving the captain a little test. And you're like, wow, this guy's really
Kirk did a great job when he was in the chair, and they were inducing the pain on him. And he's like,
Mhm.
I thought that was really great. Not over the top, but I bought into the fact that he was really in pain, when he's trying to fight through it.
Right. No, those are this I like this episode probably more than I should, but mainly because of Helen Noel. She is my favorite Star Trek chick out of all the 3 seasons. She's my favorite. And I always thought it was funny that the way Kirk reacted when he first sees her, because you get in the flashback, you get sort of the impression that they probably weren't serving on the same ship, and so they
I hope not.
yeah, because then they hooked up, right? But then now she is on the same ship, and apparently he doesn't even know she's on the ship, which I think is kind of funny. But you got 500 people, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. 430 people on the ship.
right. So, and then you kind of wonder if McCoy sent her just to stick it to him, or if
Well, that's the implication that I get is that,
right.
because of that, and he has a wry smile on his face when Kirk says, find me a, somebody who's, got psychological, blah, blah, blah. He goes, yes, Captain. And he kind of smiles a little bit. He's like, okay, all right.
Yeah,
You're going to do that?
for you.
I'll find
Because
something for you.
he just got shot down by Kirk.
Right. He was dressed down by, contradicting the great Dr. Adams,
Right, exactly. And so then he wondered, oh yeah, here you go, Jim boy. Here's a but yeah, just that sort of awkwardness and uncomfortableness. And also this is really kind of going off the track a little bit to make a point, but when we were kids, I had this one neighborhood kid. He'd complain about his mom, how she would be like yelling at him, and then the phone would ring and she'd answer the phone and go, hi, how are you, and act like nothing was going on. And he's like, my mom's such a phony. And I'm like, oh, shut up. But in that scene where they're on the elevator, right? And Kirk is like kind of whispering under his breath to Helen Noel once they get off the elevator and they're walking through the doorway, and he says, I can't remember what he's being very, kind of tough on her. Like, your job is to do this, blah, 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 blah. And then Adams comes in and he goes, Dr. Adams, how are you doing? And he makes a joke about, well, Helen Noel, glad to meet you. And he goes, yes, she's quite the, whatever. And it's like, he just turns on a dime from like sort of chastising her to, I got to be my phony captain and be greet this guy and act like everything's cool. I thought that was really kind of a nice little moment because we all have to do that, right? You could be fighting with your wife or, whatever. And then someone walks up and you're like, hey, how's it going? Good to see you again. Oh, we're doing great. And, you're just So just one of those little things that stuck with me as I was watching this episode.
There was some really creepy moments too. Like when that girl shows up, who's like an assistant there. She got the walleye. And she's got some, like, Roman or Greek name, Effie, or I forget what it is right now. And she's like, that's the person I used to be, And then there's the guy, the technician, is working the neural neutralizer, and Kirk, asks some questions, and he's kind of got this dead voice.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kirk says, thank you. And he kind of like looks over at him.
Right.
And
he
then,
doesn't respond.
The guy doesn't respond. And then he just kind of walks out. That's a really great setup scene, for this kind of tension and creepiness. Something is going on here,
Right. And Kirk suspected it, but you could see he was kind of fighting with himself, because he was like, he respected Dr. Adams, and he didn't want to think anything funny was going on, but he knew something wasn't right.
Yeah.
Something.
And plus Spock was telling him what Van Gelder was telling him. And, so he's trying to make these pieces fit. And I really like the scene where they first discover the neutralizer, and he asks Noel something, and she gives his opinion, and he overrules it. And she says, you asked me for my opinion. And he says, one of the benefits of being a captain is to asking for an opinion doesn't mean I have to take it. Something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. And then Dr. Adams like, I have to give this round to the captain on this one.
Yeah, Helen,
you're fighting above your weight here, Doctor. Russell Hall is in the house for $2. Says, did this episode mark Spock's first homoerotic? Well, one could look at it that way.
I suppose.
And then Russell also says, never meet your heroes.
That's right. I mean, you don't want to meet.
Good advice for Kirk.
Yeah. Kirk should have never met Dr. Adams, and Ron Garney should have never met Captain Kirk.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. Anna's not going to be here tonight, guys, in case you guys were wondering why it's just down to the two of us. And as I said to Ron, Aaron, Ron is like a Dickens' Ghosts of Christmas Future. He's the mercurial one, and he arrives at his own good time. So
that's right. He could be anywhere right now.
That's right.
And just right around the corner, though. I've been sort of binging Trek lately. And so I watched this episode, but then I always seem to gravitate back to the second season, because that's where some of my favorite episodes are. And it's funny, because I was watching Journey to Babel, and watching the scene in the hangar deck where Spock's dad comes off the shuttlecraft. And I was just thinking about how we had talked about on a previous episode about, that they had worked that deal. So they'd actually had somebody manufacture that for them in exchange for, what was the deal for, didn't you say the company made the shuttlecraft for them? So they had the whole shuttlecraft, but it was
AMT.
Yeah. But they had worked out some sort of deal or something, wasn't it?
They would build the life-size one for the show, and then AMT would have the manufacturing rights to the model kits.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
But so I'm fascinated now every time I watch an episode with that shuttlecraft in it, and then starting to, you think about it, they got a lot of use out of that. It hasn't shown up yet. It shows up first in Galileo 7, right?
Yes.
And that's a first season. That should be coming up actually pretty soon. But
well, that's what Shimon Winselberg was working on that script at the same time. While they were producing this show, Winselberg was working on the script for Galileo 7.
I thought that was also interesting that you brought that point up, because I remember looking at the, because I'm paying a little bit closer attention now when I watch the episodes to who directed which episode and who wrote it. And that S. Bar David, I was like, anybody that knows anything about the Bible or Hebrew, that Bar David basically means false David. A bar, because it was like, that's what that BAR means. And so I was like, so now it even has even more meaning.
I thought it meant son of David.
I thought it was, because there was a character in the New Testament who was going by Bar Jesus. And I thought it was, I may be mistaken. I'll have to go look. I'm not going to, again, as soon as I know that I'm sure about something.
Oh, you're sure?
I know. So I'm backing off. But I always thought it was an interesting name. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I'm glad that we've got this sort of clarification now on what happened there.
Yeah. And the S stands for Shimon. So it's S. Bar David.
David.
Well, okay. According to the book, it said Shimon would be Shimon, son of David.
Okay.
But or false David or false Shimon.
I'm going to look that up right now.
Do it. Oh, wait. Lynn Green says Ben David is son of David.
Oh, Ben. So like Ben-Hur is son of Hur?
We're all sons of her.
I'm doing this as quickly as possible. There was also a nice little ditty as I'm here we go. Aramaic. No, you're right. No, it says Aramaic for the Hebrew Ben. So it is son. I was incorrect.
Bar. Russell Hall says Bar also means son.
Yeah, there you go. So it's different. In the Hebrew, it's Ben, but then I guess in the Aramaic, it's Bar.
Okay.
So it's son of David, not false David. Why did I'm going to have to go back and read that. Maybe my Bible notes suck in my Bible, my study Bible. I have to go back and check that again. But anyway, that point where at the very beginning of the show where that one guy's beaming up the cargo and he can't get the transporter to work, and Kirk, and it's very interesting that Kirk is even there, because they're not beaming anybody on board. It's like, why is he in
why does he show up?
Right. But anyway, he's there and he says to the guy, that have you, accounted for the security screen on the penal colony? Yeah. And then as he's leaving, he goes, you might want to take some time to refresh yourself on the rules,
penal colony rules or something.
But he said it kind of like, he said it, he was serious, but at the same time, he had that kind of wry smile where he was just kind of, you get your act together, but don't worry, I'm not too pissed about it, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. What's interesting is normally we see Scotty in that role, but it's so funny why some people are there and they're not, and it's always tied to money. It's tied to budget, and for what Scotty would be doing there, it didn't make sense to have to pay him the $850 for his one episode. So they just hire an extra for, pennies on the dollar, and they give a line to one guy and not another guy, and it saves them money.
Dude, I never thought of that. That stuff always bugged me when I was, even up to now, watching that and going, why isn't Scotty in this episode? And it makes perfect sense. If they're not being used enough to warrant what they're getting paid, then just throw in some extra for the day and save yourself $700 or whatever it was at the time, right?
The answer to why is Kirk there? Because Kirk has to be there. He's on the payroll.
We're going to get as much use
around Shatner, so he's got to be there. And
we're going to get as much use out of Bill Shatner as we can. But you see that in the helmsman too on the bridge. Like, why is it? Where's Sulu at in this episode? Or where's so and so at? Or I was watching second season stuff when Chekhov was on there, and they always tried to get a lot of usage out of Chekhov because he was that kind of hip Beatles, Monkeys kind of guy that was on the
Right.
show, for the younger audience. There you go. And also,
Yeah.
why is
Well, he was like a semi-regular too, so maybe he had, maybe it cost more to use him than it would, just some guy they pull off the lot.
Wouldn't that kind of piss you off though if you're an actor and you're like, yeah, you only got 2 lines, and so we're just going to cut them, and you don't get to work today at all, and you're like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they're counting on a paycheck too.
Sure. Well, any of the contract guys, like Scotty had a contract, but it was for, I think, 13 episodes. The same thing with like McCoy was like 7 episodes. So he wasn't sure he was going to be in more than 7 episodes. But both those characters became very popular. So they had to sign them into full contracts,
Right. So that stuff probably didn't really start kicking in until at least would they have recalculated their contracts halfway through a season, or would it have been waited until the next season?
Well, some of them, like if you only had 7 this contract for 7, like Bones, they had to write a new one because they did more than 7 episodes in the first season.
Would they be stuck? I wonder if they would, or if everything was just the way it was set up, had to be contractual. But it's like you got a contract for, I keep thinking in terms of comics, which I know isn't the same, but it's like you get a contract for, 7 episodes, but we're going to use you in 9. Does it cost them more then to pay them for those extra 2 episodes if they're not contractually obligated?
Probably. I would think it would probably be like overtime, or time and a half or something.
Oh, yeah. That's what I
know.
was kind of curious about, because then it would make sense to go, oh, we're tearing this contract up and you're now in 9 episodes.
Right. How close are we to the girdle? Well, certainly by 3rd season.
Yeah. He's rocking that.
I don't know about the 2nd. Maybe by the end of the 2nd season. We'll have to pay attention to that and see.
Was it this episode? No, it wasn't this episode. Like I said, I've been binging lately, and there was an episode where they just contacted Kirk in his quarters, and he had his shirt off. And I remember you talking about what episode did we watch where he was shirtless? Was it the?
Well, he was shirtless in Charlie X.
Yeah. He didn't want to do it because he'd put on a few pounds.
Yeah. That was Charlie X.
Well, he must have got over it, because there's a few shirtless scenes that throughout the series, at least, probably not 3rd season, but there definitely is in the 2nd season as well.
Well, Patterns of Force, he's shirtless, and he's definitely,
oh, that's right.
He's definitely a little thicker around the middle in that one.
Yeah, because he was getting whipped. No.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, and Bones gets, or Spock gets on his back. And he's got to, make that little laser beam with the.
Was that Patterns of Force, or was that that was the wrestling one, or not the wrestling one, but the Christ one, where the Roman Empire?
Patterns of Force? It was Patterns of Force with the Nazis.
Okay.
Yeah. You're thinking of Bread and Circuses.
Yeah. I was. Yeah. Because they're both in the jail cell.
They're in a jail now.
The same cell. I just pressed it differently. I'm conflating my prison episodes.
There's a funny blooper. Do you remember when you used to go to like these conventions and they would always have the Star Trek bloopers at them?
Yes.
And that was like a staple of these conventions back in the 70s was the Star Trek bloopers. We all couldn't wait to see them. And there's that one from Bread and Circuses where what's his name? Lurch. Ted Cassidy comes in and he picks up Shatner over his shoulder and carries him off the set.
Yes. That's right.
And then there's another shot where the Roman guards, that are dressed like cops come running in, and one guy tries to stop, but I guess the soles of his feet slip and he goes, boom, goes down,
Yep. There's all those, that's all on YouTube. There's a collection of that, but the film quality was so bad because
it's really bad.
Some is so dark that you can't hardly tell what's going on, and there's like all the lines and scratches through it and everything. But
there's the one that I loved, of course, when I was like 12 years old, was when the ship is shaking and they're running, doing this kind of stuff, and it's Dr. McCoy and Nurse Chapel and he grabs her by the boobs and
and she just has this expression on her face like
she's like
here we go. Yep.
Oh, we got $20 super chat from Fox Mulder 31014. Thank you. That's a good cigar. Aaron, what'd you think of the Star Trek vid I sent? No worries if you didn't care for it. I'm sure it's not for everyone. I just enjoy coming across something iconic from the past that continues to inspire new creative work.
It was interesting in that I am like you, Fox. Anything that when someone takes an original series and does a little something with it, you're kind of like, ooh, what's this? But it was basically just kind of a funky techno music video type thing with it was weird, but it was kind of interesting that they pieced together, edited together like stuff from Star Trek, but then in the background there was like weird effects going on, and there was like this techno music, and I wasn't sure what the point of it was.
Oh, okay.
But because I was expecting it to be, it was something to make some jokes or make something funny, and it was just odd.
Okay.
Let me put it that way, Fox. I appreciate you sending me. It was worth watching, but I was not sure what I was supposed to get out of it. Very, very, very strange. But anyway, so you had mentioned all the stuff that Helen Noel, or the actress who played Helen Noel.
Yeah. Mariana Hill.
Yeah. And I saw a clip from Streets of San Francisco with the android chick from last week's episode that we talked about, from What Little Girls Are Made Of.
Oh, yeah.
I can't think of her name.
Jackson. Not Shirley Jackson.
Sherry
Jackson.
Sherry Jackson.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was in this episode of Streets of San Francisco, and I was like, she played a hooker in this episode, by the way. So but again,
I'd forgotten that Franz Nguyen, who was the Dolman in that third season one, oh shit, Elan of Troyes.
Yeah.
That she was Susie Wong in the World of Susie Wong on Broadway with William Shatner. So the two of them were on Broadway together, and then they do that Star Trek episode. And then I see her; she was in Battle for the Planet of the Apes too.
Was she really?
Yeah.
So I got to go back and look at that because I was unaware that she has a very familiar look to her. Because like when I saw that episode, I was like, I know her from somewhere. But it's like you said, these guys would get on these character actors would get on these roles. Not that she's a character actor, but guest spots and stuff like that. And they would they'd be on every show, within a 3-year period, making the rounds before they, lost favor or whatever. And then someone else came along but it is amazing how often you see that.
Do you ever see that Columbo episode that had Shatner? He was this actor. He's the killer, of course. And he's like this conceited actor, and there was a murder in this liquor store, and one of the cops in that episode is Chekhov, is Walter Koenig.
Okay.
He doesn't have a single scene with Shatner.
Oh my God. He doesn't, or he
No.
does? He does. Okay. Then this is a Columbo episode?
Yeah.
I'm going to check that out. I'll just go to YouTube and check Shatner Columbo.
Shatner's got a white jumpsuit or an ascot or something. You can't miss. He was in a couple Columbos, but I think that was the first one he was in.
That sounds really familiar. I'm sure I've seen it at some point.
And Walter Koenig plays one of the detectives. It's pretty funny.
All right, I got a question for you about this. Getting back to this episode, and see what you thought of this, because had never occurred to me until I watched this last time. So when Helen is operating the machine and Kirk's in the chair, right, and they're trying to, suggest something, and that we can be sure of the second time, because he does this, you're hungry thing, and then he's like, oh, I can't wait to get a steak, and
right.
So then he does this. The second one was, she goes, remember the Christmas party, blah blah blah, right, and then she says, but now I want to suggest that it went differently, right? Mm-hmm. And then we get the flashback. So was that flashback of actually what happened, or what she suggested happened between them?
I think it's what she suggested happened.
But it makes you wonder what really happened then, doesn't it?
Right. Well, I would infer from that it was much more chaste than what she's suggesting. That she wanted him to sweep her off her feet, but that just didn't happen. that maybe
you
they
still-
made out a little bit or something, but I think she was going to say, yo, yeah, you pick me up off my feet and you bang me 2 ways to Sunday and something,
Well, what threw me was because there's that part, and she goes, I want you to tell me that it means something.
The only good Trekkie is a dead Trekkie. General James Ursus Gregory.
Thank you,
Thank
Billy.
you, Tooch. That's a good one.
But there's this part of dialogue between them, right, where she goes, I want this to mean more to you or something like that. And he goes, do you want me to lie to you?
Right.
Or, do you want me to create this? Right.
Yeah.
And
wrap it up as a Christmas present.
Right. And you're kind of like, that sounds more like what he really would have said, not what she suggested he should have said. So that's what kind of threw me with that scene was, are we seeing what really happened? Or are we seeing what she's suggesting she wished had happened?
Yeah,
so there's like elements of both of that in there.
Yeah, it's a little unclear.
But we do know that they got it on. We do know that, regardless of the situation of how it actually went down, so to speak.
Yeah. I think they did the dirty.
I think. I also think. Go ahead.
Kirk should have Me Too'd that crazy. He sort of does.
Well, there is that. Yeah, there's that. I mean, how awkward it'd be to have and she's really good looking too. So it's like they have that woman serving underneath you with that in your past. That would be like, you would think that Kirk would get her transferred the minute they got back from his little adventure with Dr. Adams.
Well, she never shows up again.
There you go.
Oh, maybe she was transferred.
But no, I was going to say, there's parts of this. I mean, there's parts of this episode that I really like you said, the underlying tension. But then, when he sends Helen through the air duct to wherever I don't want to call it the engineering room, but whatever you want to where the power source is. That's a pretty nice little scene in there of her trying to turn that thing off. The guy catches her. They get in a brief fight. She plays dead, kicks him into the power thing. And then I love it when Spock comes in, just a minute later, a few seconds later, right? He turns off the grid for the force field. Yeah. But then he flips the power back on. So inadvertently, he's the one who kills Dr. Adams.
That's true. And that damn lid wouldn't stay up. Kept falling down on him,
Yeah. He was like, but he jams up there. But he showed some Vulcan strength by just pulling off the lock. Did you notice that?
Oh, I didn't notice that. Oh, okay. Yeah.
He just ripped it off, and I was like, have they talked about his Vulcan strength that much? I mean, has there been an episode yet where I was trying to remember if he had shown that he was much stronger than everybody else. I can't remember.
No, not yet.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting little thing, because
other than maybe in Mantrap, where he was smacking the monster, although really it could have just been anybody. So it really didn't show his strength,
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting because he rips it off with his hand, and so they must have. I'm sure a lot of that stuff, like we've talked about before, the necessity is the mother of invention, right? You're sitting there, we don't have a key. It's stupid for him to phaser this thing, which will just cost us money for special effects. And you're like, just rip it off. You're stronger than humans. Rip it off.
We'll show that later.
Yeah, we'll worry about that later.
This side of paradise, we'll cover it there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I like when Kirk is trying to open up the grate. So he's got his fingers up there and he's like, and he's pulling on it and he says, give me a hand here. And she comes over and she's grabbing it. Then they show the camera from the other side. It goes, boop.
I know, it just opens up. It's on hinges. It's like, it couldn't have been stuck that bad.
Yeah. But that's acting. He's like,
Well, and another thing, I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to. The Omega Glory, right? Where he's in the cell with the caveman dude. And they both work together to loosen the bar. Yeah. Are you telling me Spock wasn't strong enough to loosen those bars in his cell?
Right.
Waiting for, maybe he didn't have a window though. I don't know. That's true. He was on, so he might not have had a window, but Those
It's
little
amazing
things-
they got those bars off at all because one guy is turning it one way and Kirk's trying to turn it the other way.
Yeah. Like, wait a minute, we're not working together here, guys.
We're
We
not
gotta
working together here, pal. You know, it's just we can't get this bar to move.
And Spock's like, perhaps if you both turn the bar the same direction, Captain.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the ticket right there.
yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I don't know if that woman with the walleye, it was her walleye that terrified me as a kid, or if it was her creepier performance. Maybe a
I
combination
think
of
it was the
both.
two. You know, it's like, oh, she's a little weird looking and sounding.
And
You know?
you wonder if did they cast her because she's weird looking, or was she somebody's friend and it was like, oh yeah, get her in, and we need some, and she just happened to,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you got to wonder when someone has like a funky eye like that, it's like, how many roles are they seriously going to get?
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's a
Unless
good
they're
point.
those type of roles,
Yeah. Like you're confined to horror movies or something.
Yeah. Or if you knew, the associate producer or something.
Right.
Yeah, my girlfriend, she's got a funky eye, but she can be here in 10 minutes.
Script says woman with funky eye.
Does anybody have a girlfriend?
I got this one. I got this one.
That guy's been waiting his whole career. Yeah, I know. I can do it.
Joan, you got to get down here.
Can you play catatonic?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So good.
Hey, maybe it's the backup singer for Gunther, the one Billy likes, the wall-eyed girl.
All right. So here's another question for you. Van Gelder gets returned to the penal colony at the end of the episode. We don't see it, but they have a discussion about it. And he said the machine's been dismantled. He goes, Dr. Van Gelder said the machine's been dismantled. So are we under the impression that you could go back, sit in that chair, and have the effects reversed? Because he was certainly not functional.
Able to go back and function?
Yeah, because he was certainly not functional.
Yeah.
Well,
maybe Spock's mind meld, rewired him, or like he implanted, or took out the shit that was in his head, that was planted in there by Van Gelder and got him squared away.
Oh, yeah, that would work. I'll buy that. I'll buy
because
that.
we've seen him use a mind meld between a door and get a guy to walk in, so.
And back to the Omega Glory, he actually used just telepathy kind of to get that girl to get at the end. To open up the communicator.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So now we have established the Vulcan neck pinch and the Vulcan mind meld.
And a hint at his strength.
And
he tears the lock off that box.
Right.
He goes like this. He hits it and then tears it off. And I'm like, I've tried that before and it doesn't work.
I'm going to have to watch that again.
Hurts my hand. Boom. And then just rips it and throws it off. And he tries to flip it up and it won't stay up.
I'll have to. I just watched it today, but I was working, so my head was down sometimes. So it could have happened.
Well, Graham, that I am a flood of disinformation. We've already proven that. So maybe I wasn't watching closer. I was seeing something I wasn't seeing.
Wait a minute. Are you sure?
I'm not. I am so sure. No, no. I'm pretty sure because this is a question I've had forever. I was like, wow. He just goes boom and tears the lock off. But maybe I'm missing something, or there's a lot more logical explanation to what the physics is of what he did there. But I always took it for him, being stronger than the average guy, or that's one crappy lock. So, because they actually had a little lock on it, because he rips it off and throws it on the floor. He just and flips the thing up. So
obviously it wasn't a master lock.
No,
because you can shoot a bullet through those. Remember? Right.
That'd been great if you pulled out his phaser and shot a hole through the lock, and it still wouldn't go.
Still wouldn't. Damn it! That would be good. They used a lot of sets in this. If you noticed, the walls that weren't like rooms, the outside walls and stuff had that sprayed on popcorn ceiling look, because they reused the sets from the previous episode or 2 episodes earlier. What are little girls made of?
Yes.
Yeah, but they didn't have the penis stalagmite or
No, they
stalactite
got rid
in
of
this one.
that. Now, if that had been sitting in the chair, we might have had some problems. If they'd had the stalagmite sitting there in the chair, and give you a little bit of what's been going on in this room. It's like, what the heck is going on here?
Big orgy in the penal colony.
Oh my gosh.
So, how would you rate this episode?
This is a tough one for me because I like it. And like I said, Helen Noel skews everything for me on this episode. But even as a kid, I had a crush on her, So there are some plot holes in it, but they're not ones that, you fall into as you can move through this episode pretty cleanly and feel satisfied at the end that you haven't, that it was a pretty good adventure. It's not one that I watch frequently because there's not enough action in it.
Right.
But I do think that if I took myself back to when this was first on NBC and that episode came up, I wouldn't have been
Swing.
Yeah. I wouldn't have been disappointed with it, and said, oh, that was one of the better episodes. So I did like it. And it did have some great bits in it. That's the one thing about this episode. It has a lot of nice bits in it.
That sequence, we didn't talk about this, is when Kirk decides he wants to go check out the Tantalus device, or not the Tantalus device, the neural
neutralizer.
And he says to her, can you operate it? I think so, blah, blah, blah. But then he says something, he goes to the door and he says something to her. And now she's looking at us and she's got this very coy look on her face. Coming. You know the scene I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like that interaction because she's constantly defending this guy's techniques and stuff. And Kirk is now, and Kirk was that way too when he was on the ship, but now he's starting to question and he needs more information, all that kind of stuff. I just think it's kind of really cool how she reacts to him in that sequence,
Well, there's definitely through that whole thing, they never, either one of them let go of their performance of their past relationship. Which I think is clever because we always say that, Kirk's a bit of a ham actor and all this kind of stuff. And he is.
I don't.
But never did he, especially not in TJ Hooker. But
yeah, well, okay.
No, but this, again, the nuance of, doing a performance and her too. And that you're saying, okay, well, this is how you're reacting in this situation, but you got to keep in mind that you had a previous relationship and those feelings are dictating some of your actions. I mean, that's what I would say as a director, but as an actor, I would go, I don't know how to pull that off, but they did because you never lost sight of the fact that there was this uneasy tension between the two of them.
Right.
And even before we knew what happened between them, that was established in the transporter. I mean, she gives a hint of it, goes, the Christmas party. And he's like,
yeah,
I
remember. And Spock has got a bemused look like he's like,
I know. Yeah. Spock. And then when he walks in on him, remember when he's like making out or forcefully making out.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, goes in there to like, he's going to save the day. And then Kirk's making out and he's just like,
that's my captain.
Oh, and you know what she said to him when he was like grabbing her and she was like, no, it was, this isn't right. Like she wanted to do it,
Right.
but she knew it wasn't regulation.
It's like taking advantage of a drunk.
Right, exactly. And
Yeah.
so I mean I really enjoyed the performance of their relationship in this episode. So to answer your question,
Before you answer the
oh,
question, I just
yes.
wanted to dovetail into something here, is because people probably wondering, well, why wasn't Janice Rand in this episode? Why wasn't she the girl that went down? And because she was a contract character, and the reason that they didn't use her was the script called for that sequence of somebody working the neural neutralizer. And it didn't make sense that a yeoman would know how to work that scientific gadgetry. So it needed to be somebody with psychiatric knowledge of psychology and be a doctor. And so that's why, Janice Rand was dumped for this episode.
Well, it would have been really super awkward because they couldn't have played up the romance angle because he couldn't be involved with his yeoman.
That's the other thing, is that they wrote themselves into a corner with that in the beginnings of the series, where there's moments where he's like longing for her, like when they think they're all gonna die, he's holding her on the bridge and stuff, and there's this sort of undercurrent, unrequited love that they couldn't take anywhere. And I think it was the writing was on the wall at this point that Grace Lee Whitney was on her way out.
Well, that is I mean, you can always play up the sexual tension for, as long as you want, I suppose. But wasn't she having drug problems or alcohol problems or something like that kind of, they had to replace her because she was being unreliable because she wasn't,
I don't know if she had it then, but she did later on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they just might have got rid of her just because she just didn't work in how they were using her long term.
Right. Yeah.
Which makes sense. I mean, I can see that, because how far can you go with this?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I liked her character. You guys make fun of her hair, but I just figured that's 60s in space. So I had no problem with her hair, but it was like, I liked her as a character.
Well, she has more to do in the next episode.
Is that Mary?
She's got quite a bit. Yeah. The next episode is Miri.
But she also makes sort of a confession to Kirk in that episode, if you recall.
Right. I'm always trying to get you to look at my legs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he should have said, "Oh, I'm looking. You just don't know."
Yeah.
So is everybody else.
A little cellulite there, Janice. You might want
to clean that up.
On deck 4.
Wow. So, but
all
anyway,
right. So give me. So what was your rating?
I hate to sound like a broken record because all these kind of fit into that same sort of, except for the ones that like what was the Romulan
Lazarus?
one? No, the
Romulan?
Yeah, the Romulan. What was that? That was what was that called?
Balance of Terror.
Yeah, Balance of Terror. That rose up to like a 9 for me. But most of mine are in that 7.75 range because there's a couple I really despise, but most of them I think are good. They're just not all great. And I think I'm going to be right there again with about a 7.5 on this one. Mm-hmm. It might be lower if I wasn't in love with, didn't have this past infatuation with Helen Noel, but
their little dimple.
I still think I'm going to go 7.5. I'm going to give 7.5.
Okay. I don't think there's too many first season episodes I will give below a 7. Most of mine have been in the 8s to date. There's been a couple 9s and there was even a 10. But the first season is so damn solid for me that really they're way above average. So this one's good. I would give this. I think I would give this a 7.5. Like you.
I think that fits nicely. Again, if you're saying 5 is just average, this is certainly above average. But it's not as good as some of the other ones we've seen, right? So it's like you got to kind of. So yeah, I think I'm comfortable right there to 7.5 for this.
When we get to the alternative factor, then we're going to get a.
I know it's hard to believe that episode is so bad that it's hard to believe it's first season.
Yeah, Yeah.
or even second season, because there's only one, I think, second season episode. I think Metamorphosis, which is a second season, but should
Second
have been a
season.
third season.
I love that episode. Oh, you
Do
don't
you
like
love?
that?
Oh God, I hate it. Hate it.
With
Maybe it's because it's too romance centered and not enough action.
Oh, I thought it was
centered.
very sweet. I
Well,
thought that was a great episode about unrequited love, and I just thought that was a great one. The music was great. Kirk's performance was great. We get to meet Zephyr Cochrane, and he is really cool.
I don't know. Maybe it's because I just hated that chick. She was such a.
Well, yeah, she had the disease,
Yeah, she wasn't too friendly.
What was the name of
anyway,
the episode again?
it was Metamorphosis.
Metamorphosis. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was just, yeah. Well, we'll get to that in due time, but I've got more to say about it than just that. But yeah. So what are we looking at next week, Graham?
Next week is Miri.
Okay.
Which is one of the first episodes I remember seeing.
That's a creepy episode.
It is creepy when that kid comes running out, after his tricycle.
Yeah.
Mine.
Yeah, that was like a
Fever,
zombie or something.
Yeah, it freaked me out,
Yeah, that was a really scary scene, that opening scene.
Yeah, there's a lot of scary stuff in that. So that'll be an interesting one next week.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll have the entire landing party here for that.
That's right. Not just, what did Scotty say? It'll make it almost impossible for one man to control the ship. He goes, you worry about your miracles, I'll worry about mine.
That's right. And you and I are miracle workers, Aaron. We can make this show roll. Just the two of us.
That's right. Just don't get us started on Star Trek 2, because then it turns into something totally different.
Yeah, when we get to the movies, we're gonna cover
that one.
This.
And I will say this, because I was going to make this kind of crossover point about Kirk being too trusting of Dr. Adams.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember, and I'm sure you do, in Star Trek 2, when they're coming up to Khan, and they're not getting their first encounter, where he has stolen the other ship, the other Federation ship,
mm-hmm.
and he doesn't go to red alert, and he should go to red alert. And there's that one scene where they finally get a transmission from Khan, who says, they said their coil, whatever, is overloading their coil is overloading their comm system. And then Spock goes, their coil emissions are normal. He should have gone to red alert right there, and he didn't do it. And it always pissed me off. So maybe Kirk just has this thing about being too trusting sometimes for his own good, because he did this with Dr. Adams, trusted him a little bit too much, got himself in trouble, trusted the Reliant a little bit too much in Star Trek 2, got himself in trouble. So I don't know. Is it a reoccurring
how many
thing?
times does a Federation ship get hijacked? You're thinking,
True.
You're thinking the best, possible outcome here is, all right, the comm system's down or something. It's not like the ship has been taken over by, anybody. You wouldn't think that. So,
but as soon as they lied to you, you'd think that something was up.
Right.
Wouldn't
but
you?
then it happened pretty quick.
That's true. And you're right. We do have the foreknowledge of knowing that Khan is actually on that ship, and he doesn't. So,
right. Now, before we started the show, Aaron made a confession. He had watched a movie which was an inspiration for Joe Frankenstein, the Mummy's Hand. Now, as we all know, Aaron does not like Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, and we're still friends. But he has not told us or me how he felt about the Mummy's Hand. So, this is definitely not Star Trek related, but you get what you pay for.
That's right. But there could be some tension here. There could be some tension. Well, in my final analysis, I said,
tell me why this isn't the greatest Universal B movie.
Okay. Well, I did take into consideration the length of the movie, which is, again, how long? It's not very long. Like 107 minutes or something. What did you say it was?
I think it's 70 minutes.
Oh, 70. Yeah, not 107. 70 minutes. Yeah. So like an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 10 minutes.
Maybe an hour, maybe 90 tops.
Yeah, it's not any longer than that.
No.
But I will say, going into it, I saw the movie poster, and I mentioned this before we went on the air, but I thought the hero looked like a dope. And I thought the fact that he had a comedic sidekick was going to make this really stupid. And what turned out, I thought the guy that played the lead was a better hero than I thought he was going to be. And the sidekick wasn't as dumb as I thought they were going to make him. He actually was. He was a wisecracker, but he was helpful. You know what I mean? He wasn't a screw up. He was always able to do what needed to be done, but he always had like a comment or a wisecrack, right? And so I thought that was good. I thought Tyler as the mummy was fine. I thought,
wasn't it great how they animated his eyes?
Yeah, it was very creepy.
Yeah.
And I thought there was a couple things that were like was it the Terra leaves?
The Tana leaves.
Tana leaves that they would get the liquid from that gave the mummy life. And he had this little henchman, the evil guy, the bad guy, the high priest, who inherited that role. We see that at the beginning of the movie. We get the backstory.
George Zuko.
Yeah. So he's having his little henchman guy plant these bottles of juice in these guys' tents, these archaeologists' tents, to get the mummy to go in there and kill him, where he could have just said, go kill these people and I'll reward you with the, you know what I mean? It was like, it seemed like a really weird, convoluted way to get the mummy in there. Like, this guy was running around planting bottles and you're like, why does he even have to do this?
Well, maybe the mummy wouldn't listen to him if he didn't have a reason.
Well, possibly. But again, I want clarification on these things. Don't make me write your story for you, Graham. I want it there. I want it spelled out. But that wasn't a big deal, but I just thought it was kind of strange that it was kind of convoluted in how they would get the mummy to go do this stuff. And, but what threw me was at the end where the mummy grabs the girl, and he has no reason to grab the girl, other than she's pretty, that's a trope for a monster, right? Grab the pretty girl, but nothing's been set up like they talked about it. The princess, right? That her tomb was around there someplace, all right? So you figure there's a connection. And maybe they didn't want to use the exact same situation that we had in Boris Karloff, The Mummy, where he sees this girl that looks like his love, and so he's going to mummify her and make him, bring. But it
was her. She was reincarnated.
That's true. You're right.
Yeah.
But in this case, the mummy grabs the girl, brings her back to the high priest dude, who now suddenly, without any, setup at all, I'm going to make you immortal so you and I can live together. And you're just like, wait a minute. When did you fall in love with her?
Right.
That's the only thing that bugged me near the end of it. And they could have, again, you say it's low budget, and I get that, but those kind of problems can be easily solved just with an extra 5-minute scene or some dialogue, different dialogue throughout the film that led you believe that this guy's infatuated with this woman. They do meet, and he does talk to her and warn her about,
he should have shown some type of interest in her in that scene.
Yes. And he
instead of just being, a warning device,
Right. I mean, he did make her uncomfortable by saying, oh, you're very beautiful, and we're going to be sad to see you leave, our country. Or
your
whatever.
Father is a great artist, and may I say, you are quite charming.
Yeah, that doesn't mean anything, right? Doesn't. But they could have set that up better, and it wouldn't have required that much more effort. So that was really. So on the one hand, I was pleasantly surprised by the performance of our leads. And then on the other hand, I was like a little bit disappointed in their lack of plot development. Right. So
that's fair.
I finished by saying this is light years better than Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein, but not as good as the original Mummy. I had to get that shot in there on you, Graham.
Oh, well, it's all right. It's right here, right now.
Hey, you give me grief about Star Trek 2 all the time, so I figured that's
what? I never do that.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right.
Deresitron says Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein is one of my all-time favorite movies. Mine
You
too.
know, we see that in the chat. I get grief on my Sunday show for that. And, they want me to kick myself every time I bring it up off my own show because I'm so mean to that movie. But gosh darn it, I'm hanging on. I'm holding my guns on this one.
That's all right. It's all right. It's not like you talk dirt about The Thing from Another World.
That's a great movie.
Okay. All right. Whew.
Now I do like,
that's my all-time favorite movie.
I know it is. I do like the remake better, probably simply because of the monster element. And I'm a big Kurt Russell fan,
Right.
But that first movie, that is a really good movie.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We found consensus.
There you go.
Yeah. Which is part of what Star Trek's all about is seeking out new life and new ideas. And some of them are wrong. But
Star Trek 2. But we can't. In Gene Roddenberry's world in the future, we'd all agree on everything, and we'd be wearing man skirts. But here, in reality, here we can. What is it that John Wooden famously said? You can disagree, just don't be disagreeable.
Oh, I like that.
We're disagreeing, but we're not disagreeable. We're still friendly.
That's right.
Marcus Killigrew saying kick Aaron. See, that's what I did. Everywhere I go. Everybody loves Abbott and Costello.
Anyway.
So I used to love it, but I just on the recent viewing I had, I was just like, me and my daughter were like, this just isn't working for me.
Oh man, that is like one of those all-time like winter or rainy day movies when it would come on, on like the creature features on Saturdays. So, my brother and I would look through the TV guide and it's like, oh, look what's up, and we'd watch it.
When I was a kid.
Couldn't wait.
I love that. Now, is the where's the one that Bela Lugosi's in? Is that the Abbott and Costello Meet Dracula?
No, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Was he in that? Was Bela Lugosi in that?
Yeah, he plays Dracula for only the second time on film.
Why was I okay? Well, who's in The Mummy? Did they have a Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy?
Yeah.
Is there any other monster? I haven't seen that in ages. Is there any other
monsters? No, it's just the Mummy in that.
Okay.
This is the only Frankenstein's the only one that has the trio. Has the other monsters in it. And it's only the second time that Lugosi played Dracula on the screen.
Wow, maybe I just blacked him out because I can't stand Lugosi. But don't get me started on that. Let's move along before I give Graham an aneurysm. You know what's interesting? What you just said there. See, I'm moving past. I got my shot in, and then I'm moving past it rather quickly. But Glenn Strange only played Frankenstein twice, and one of them. This is remarkable to me.
House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, and Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
I forgot House of Dracula. I'm sorry. Okay, so 3 times, and I guess Karloff only played the monster 3 times too, right? Because it always bugged me that Glenn Strange got so much, his likeness got used almost as much as Karloff's did for the monster, and I was always offended by that. And
what was really sad is when Karloff died. In the LA Times, in the obituary, they said, Frankenstein actor dies, whatever. And they showed a picture of Glenn Strange.
That would really piss me off. I guess he was dead, so he didn't care, but his family must have been pissed. How could you make a mistake like that in LA?
I know.
But Glenn Strange we're going to go off on a totally different tangent here, and I'm sorry. I know you want to end the show, but Glenn Strange, his part in those was not really that big, So no. I never really understood why his image stuck.
Because he looked great. Outside of Karloff, he looked great.
Yeah, but he didn't look like I say, he didn't look as good as Karloff. Karloff's look is iconic. I guess Glenn Strange is now too, but only because they forced it on us. I mean, the only thing worse than Glenn Strange's Frankenstein is Bela Lugosi and Frankenstein versus the Wolfman. So, look at Graham is going to explode. Look at him; he can't take it. I only say that because of my great reverence for Karloff, which I know you share.
That's true. Can you guys transition after working through Star Trek to a YouTube series where you get together and talk about monster movies and old sci-fi movies? Well, Fox Mulder, you need to tune in on October 1st of every year. I do 31 Days of Monsters. Every day for 31 days, right up to Halloween. I cover monster and sci-fi and horror movies with a new list every single year.
You know, it'd be great. You, me, and Tucci do a show where we just fight about classic monster films. And I would guess you put me in the middle and you guys on either side, and I would bet you guys would just be hating me after every single episode. And I'm a huge monster fan, and yet I'm so critical of those movies. It's funny.
Yeah.
Maybe not to you, but
well, we all got our tastes, you know. I mean, I love A-list monster movies, and I love certain B-list monster movies just because, you know, because they're fun to make fun of, or they have, interesting character actors in it or something, you know. The real key to any great like B movie is A, there's no self-awareness, and B, the characters believe, no matter how outrageous something is happening on the screen, they believe it. And if they believe it, you'll believe it.
Yep.
You know, that's what makes them good. You know, but today when they make a bad movie like that, the characters are so self-aware of pop culture and all that and monsters, you know, it's ridiculous. You can't get behind it. You know,
I think that's why
it's disingenuous.
I think that's why Superman with Christopher Reeve was so effective.
Yeah,
you know?
it was genuine.
Yeah, it was absolutely genuine. And so, but I don't know. My love of monsters, when I was a kid, I didn't care. It was just straight across the board. I don't care who was playing Frankenstein, whatever. But as I got older, I had an appreciation for the look, right? And so for me, it was like Karloff it was perfect. And anything, I reject anything beyond that's not as good as Karloff, even if, you know, it might be a good movie, but it's hard for me to get behind another actor portraying Frankenstein. And, you know, I like Werewolf of London so much because I love the makeup and how Henry Hull looks as that. It's a good thing. See, everybody hates me now, but I'm keeping it real, man. As the kids say, I'm keeping it real.
Aaron's being base.
This is why I'm a red shirt, because I'm eventually going to get killed. Anyway, so there you go. You can wrap the show. I've done I've done enough damage for one night.
No, we all love Aaron, no matter what he thinks of certain movies. But hey, everybody, thanks a lot. Sorry we went off the rails there a little bit, but Aaron had brought it up behind stage or backstage, and I wanted to touch on that because we both love this stuff. I mean, really, it comes from
I really do. It's true.
You know, we may make fun of things like Star Trek or these, you know, Universal monster movies or anything like that, but I mean, they are our favorite things in the world. We just love them, just like we make fun of comics too, because we love that. So it all comes from a good place. That's and right. Really appreciate everybody coming in here. Next week, hopefully the rest of the landing party will join us, and we will be doing Miri. So don't miss that. You guys have a great rest of your week, and thank you so much for tuning in. And live long and prosper.
Indeed.